Hello and welcome everyone to part 7 of In My Shadow. I know the cliffhangers are getting really mean, and no, they're not really getting better anytime soon, but that's why we are jumping straight back into it. I hope you enjoy. Let's go. Sakusa couldn't move. He stared at the letter, reading it for the 5th time, and still not understanding. This made no sense. He had gotten better. Atsumu had gotten better. He promised he had. It had been years since his last relapse, and now one expected him to believe it would just happen out of the blue? Except he had been acting strange. But it was nothing like the times he had been struggling before. This was different. He was jumpy and scared. He promised he'd explain it to them. His breathing accelerated. Every attempt to regain composure was in vain, until suddenly Aaron pulled him into his arms. He didn't say anything. Where would he have even started? He was torn between confusion and guilt, and the pain was overwhelming. If all he could do at the moment was to make sure his boyfriends wouldn't fall apart in the process, he'd see to that. He patted soothingly over Sakusa's arm and rested his chin on the crown of his hair as the raven searched for comfort in the embrace. All this time they had been running, rushing to get to Atsumu as quickly as possible, when suddenly their world had been forced to a screeching halt, and all they were left with was to pray someone would end their nightmare. It was as though they stood at the edge of a cliff, and all it would take was a last bit of certainty for them to fall. At the moment, they hung on by a thread. Something wasn't right. It didn't make sense. There must be a more logical solution, one that would bring Atsumu back to them. Next to them, Osamu was trying to reach his partners with Kita's phone since Atsumu had taken his. Suna, for some reason, wasn't available. Try Komori next. I know. He was on edge and furiously wiping the tears from his eyes. His letter lay crumpled and tear-stained on the coffee table. Motia, can you... They stood just close enough for Sakusa to make out his cousin's voice from the other end of the line in the silence. The background noise wasn't as overwhelming as he had expected. It sounded like he stepped outside. Is Len with you? Then? Wasn't he supposed to stay with you? Osamu faltered. The longer this went on, the messier it seemed to get. Yes, but he ran off before I could tell him. Said he had an idea or something. I didn't expect him to go far, but now I can't find him, and I don't know what to do next. He sounded utterly distraught, like this was somehow his fault. At this moment, Sakusa just wished he could be here by his side. Motia always calmed him when everything got too much and too chaotic, and Sakusa couldn't stand to see him cry. Don't worry, we'll find him. Then can look after himself. He wouldn't do something stupid. He grabbed his phone so tight that his knuckles turned white. The unspoken words lingered in the short silence that followed as his eyes glossed over and became unfocused. New tears found their way down his cheeks. Suna wasn't that stupid, but apparently Atsumu was. And for all they knew, he had succeeded this time. A sob tore from Sakusa's throat at the thought, and instantly Aaron's arms around him tightened. Have you found Atsumu? No, but he had my phone. Can you find it through the app? What? Oh, sure, of course. Why didn't we think of it sooner? I bet Lynn did. Perhaps he's already with him. Sakusa clung to that small glimpse of hope as he waited. This had to work. It had to. Atsumu couldn't be... Does the bridge ring a bell? His world shattered. A bridge. Atsumu was a bridge. No. Sakusa refused to understand the implications of that. No. Then is there as well. Oh, no. Now signal went off. The silence in the room was deafening. The shock resonated through their bones. Do you think he ran out of battery? It never runs out of battery. He sounded puzzled, though Sakusa barely acknowledged it. Suna was there. He could stop him. Suna was their last chance. He could stop him. If he arrived in time, maybe Atsumu wouldn't... Samu? Sakusa shot up from the couch. He freed himself from Aaron's embrace and bolted to the door, the others close behind him. Toya, stay there. We're going to the bridge. Please. Please don't disappear as well. His voice broke and Sakusa understood. They had to hurry. Maybe Suna could buy them time, but they needed to stop Atsumu. He would do everything to stop him. He needed him. Kiami, don't worry. Suna wouldn't let this happen. His expression was grim but determined. He had to believe that. Otherwise, I was already lost. The night seemed to get colder with every step he took. His feet hurt as if on fire after walking the cold wet ground for so long. His socks were drenched and a feeble shield against the uneven gravel. By now, he could see his breath in the light of the street lamps. The only thing colder than the quickly dropping temperatures of the night was the blade kissing the skin on his back. His breath shortened further, but he tried not to let his weakness show. I'm sorry, beloved. This must be so uncomfortable, but it is only for a little while. Only to make sure no one will follow us. She snuggled closer to him, almost whispering the last words in his ear, but they echoed through the empty streets regardless. They will follow us regardless. Unless you have a plan to fake my suicide as well. Thought so. Suna scoffed. He walked a couple of steps before them, hands to his side as instructed by Haru-chan. She ordered him to simply walk forward and only corrected his direction when she suspected him of leading them in circles or back in any way. Who knows? Perhaps you were just so grief-stricken and plagued by guilt after you failed to talk your best friend and boyfriend's twin out of jumping that you couldn't bear facing them again. Suna laughed. It sounded ice cold and would make anyone's blood run cold. The gaze he threw over his shoulder was murderous. Atsumu could feel her grip on him and the blade tightening, and the pressure at his back increased ever so slightly. They would never believe that. Would they believe it once they find your corpse at the bottom of a cliff? Careful, Suna Rentaro. I haven't decided what to do with you yet. It was a barely concealed threat. She would decide how he died, whether it would be quick or slow, painful or hell. Atsumu shivered. To think she had been in his shadow all this time, just waiting for her time to strike, like a viper hanging in the trees, waiting for an unsuspecting bird to land on her branch. Her gaze was just as venomous. I'm not the one you're holding at gunpoint. I fear you overestimate the control you have over me, by far.
Do I? I wasn't aware you wanted to explain to Atsumu so badly how you were at fault for his brother's death.
Her voice didn't waver, but Atsumu saw cracks appear on her calm facade. The sickly sweet tone from before had been replaced by icy poison, and there was nothing left from her pretentious gentleness. Her grip felt as if it was made from iron. It was apparent that she hadn't expected Suna at the bridge. He was her biggest mistake, and her plan couldn't accommodate that. As much as she tried to pretend it did, and that she knew how to deal with this, Atsumu knew that she didn't. She was stalling. That's why she didn't instruct Suna on where to go specifically. She hadn't decided yet. The setter tried to remain calm, or rather, managed to regain some composure. Seeing the monster that has been taunting him this entire time struggle helped. The cold had cooled his heated thoughts of vengeance and hectic instincts to flee blindly. In a way, that she had taken his shoes helped. It gave him something to focus on. Just like when he tried to prevent a panic attack, the cold helped. It was just in time for him to see something he might have otherwise missed. Suna held his hands behind his back now. It looked natural at first glance, but then he shifted his fingers. Immediately Atsumu understood. This was their sign in high school for a left-wing attack. He had mere seconds to react. With half a step to the side, he caused Haru to stumble, and just as he leaned to the right, Suna turned around and threw something. The small object grazed past him and hit her straight in the face. He held his breath, and with one rapid movement freed his wrist from her grip and stumbled forward. Suna caught him and stabilized him before pushing him away from her. Run! His voice cut out, but he didn't have to say another word. Atsumu already understood. Although his feet were hurting, and the drawn-out panic had caused him to feel drained of any energy he had left after the match, he ran. Adrenaline pumped through his veins, and his legs carried him forward. Suna was right behind him. He didn't let go of his jacket. Instead, he grabbed his arm and took the lead. Any pain he felt faded into the background as survival instinct kicked in. He didn't look back. He just ran. The cold air cut into the tender tissue of his lungs and throat as he sucked in the breath desperately. He could barely feel the ground beneath him anymore. What now? Your phone? His lips moved, but he wasn't sure the words were legible. Barely any sound rang through to him over his own breathing. He wasn't sure if he'd slow down, if the familiar footsteps would reappear behind him, and he didn't want to know. He never ever wanted to hear them again. No. Suna's breathing was labored and cut in odd places. As an athlete, it was odd for him to be out of breath so quickly, but ultimately the shock seemed to do the rest. They had to run. For a moment, Atsumu believed to see a shadowy figure in the reflection of a nearby window. Immediately, he felt like prey again. The memories of the past days tried forcing themselves into the forefront of his mind, and he struggled to keep them out. What do you think I threw? He coughed and stumbled. This time it was Atsumu catching and holding him upright. Just a little. Around the corner there is police. He held on by a thread and pushed forward. Atsumu followed his example. He felt the knife rather than hearing it. In the blink of an eye, his head turned reflexively, and he had just enough time and a huge amount of luck to pull himself closer to Suna before it hit him. He didn't manage to dodge it, and from one moment to the other, his face erupted in flames of burning pain. They licked over his skin as a sticky substance coated his cheeks and forehead. He was blind. His eyes shut reflexively and refused to open. He wasn't even sure they had taken the attack unscathed. Everything in him screamed to cover his face with his hands and cower down in pain, but he pushed through. The best he could do was bring his right hand to the wound in a futile attempt to stop it, while clinging with his left to Suna as though he was the last remaining lifeline. He was. Atsumu couldn't see a thing. He couldn't feel or sense anything beyond the pain, solely focused on keeping his legs moving. From afar he believed Suna called his name, but he couldn't say for sure. When he tried to open his mouth, it filled with blood immediately. Slowly but surely, the dizziness became overwhelming. Panic spread through him once more. He didn't know how far it was anymore. He couldn't run for much longer. Door. He heard a click, fell forward, and then the air around him was warm. It was warm. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I hope you liked this part. And if you did, don't forget to leave a like because it really helps the channel out. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on the next part. Now, I will fully admit my voice is still a bit not back to normal because I was in a party yesterday, but I tried my best and I really hope you liked it. I'm sorry also for this video being a day late. Tell me your favorite quote under the pinned comment, it would mean the world to me. A special thanks goes out as always to my nerdy neckos. Welcome Avril to the nerdy necko team. Thank you so much for being here and supporting me. Here are my other social media. They're most active here on YouTube and on Chatty, and if you would like to see more of my stuff, check out these videos. And now I hope you have a wonderful and amazing day.
Get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you want to be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.